Folks, welcome to the Cabinet meeting in Croydon. Apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Leader, apologies have been received from Councillor Wayne Tracus-Lawler, Councillor Phil Thomas and Councillor Jason Perry.
Was that covered it, Councillor Pollard? Okay, well, normally at that point, I would have asked Jim for apologies, and with the indulgence of members and guests in the room, Jim Simpson's with us tonight, who has been with this council for 34 years, many years as a clerk to the cabinet, and has played a huge role in the running of the council and doing many those behind the scenes jobs that most of us take for granted, and but if they weren't happening, we wouldn't be sitting here. So can I, on behalf of the Cabinet, and I'm sure the Shadow Cabinet, just make a very short presentation of Jim's favourite tipple to Jim, and wish him every success and good wishes going forward in the future. Jim. Okay, if we can crack straight back on with business, if we can agree the minutes of the previous meeting. Declarations of interest, disclosures of interest, assume they're as printed. Urgent business, I've not been notified of any, which brings us on to the budget for 2018 and the setting of the council tax, with a recommendation to go forward to council tomorrow night. Clearly an awful lot of hard work has gone into this budget and delivering this budget for Croydon. It is set against the backdrop, sadly, of ongoing cuts to our finances, huge pressures on local government, as we've seen from the appalling state of Northamptonshire Council and the almost bordering on bankruptcy there. Yet amidst this, I'm proud that this Labour administration is again delivering a balanced budget, and again, as we'll hear from colleagues, delivering a budget that's protecting the key frontline services for the people of Croydon and investing in many other excellent projects round the borough, even against that tough financial backdrop. And it really does make a difference in terms of the value for money we deliver, the way we've let space out in Burnham Wetherall House, but numerous other ways to bring in extra income, even in these tough times, and to watch every penny and to make sure that as I said, we are protecting those frontline services. Councillor Simon Hall, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. And as I reflect on this budget, I'm forced to recall that 4 years ago we had a self-confessed £100 million hole in the council's finance, and once again, in these tough times, we are delivering. We're delivering our manifesto commitments. We are being ambitious for Croydon, and we're delivering the services that matter for residents, protecting the vulnerable, providing essential services, and indeed investing in our borough's future. Now, the grant reduction that we've seen over the last few years and set to continue, I find a truly shocking one. As you can see, by 18-19, we will have seen 70% reduction in our grant funding. Now, this is greater than any other part of government and of public services. And indeed, it's worth noting that since 2014-15, the last budget set by the Conservatives, I would imagine the last ever budget to be set by the Conservatives, we've seen over £40 million cash loss in our grant funding, which is 1/3 of loss just in those 4 years in real terms. And if you look at it, given our growth, per property, over 40% reduction in those 4 years, and as I say, 70% since 2010. And what we do know is that as stated by the Tory-led Local Government Association, there is a £2 billion shortfall, prospectively, in adult social care, and a similar amount for children's social care. And as you mentioned, Leader, we've seen in Tory-run North Hants them effectively going bankrupt and being told that their budget proposals that were going forward were probably constituted an illegal budget. So that is just some of the context against which this budget is being set. And when we look in terms of fairness, we can see how Croydon, compared to inner London boroughs, and in terms of need, we are more comparable to inner London boroughs, is massively underfunded. To put it in context, if we were funded at the level of the lowest inner London borough per head, we would have some £25 million a year more to spend on services than we actually do. And it's worth reminding ourselves what those services are, in terms of, the main areas of spend being to support our vulnerable residents, to support services such as streets and waste that people take sometimes for granted, but as we all know, are not automatic. And what we have done is we have protected those frontline services. We have innovated with things like the Gateway Service, with our work on homelessness, where we totally bucking the London trend in terms of the number of homeless, and in particular the number in emergency accommodation, where we've introduced the Think Family approach and very successful digital enabling schemes, as well as massive reductions in back office. And, if we just take Bernard Wetherall House and the use of that, by what we have done in the last 4 years, we have saved some £5 million per year by taking a totally different approach from the previous administration. But with a massive reduction in grants, even if you include business rates and grants together as sources of funding, you can see that now council tax has become the main area of funding. And as I say, we have seen that £40 million plus cash loss in the last 4 years, at the same time as demographic growth, population increase, and of course 10% inflation. Now, in terms, as I say, there's those funding cuts, but there's also the historic underfunding, because to be fair, under governments of both colours, Croydon has not had its fair share. But the scale of funding cuts has really made that worse. There is the underfunding of adult and children's social care, but also the impact of welfare reform. We know that because we were a pilot authority for universal credit, the benefits cap, the freezing of working age benefits, that has put a huge strain on services. And just in the last year, we have had to add millions in areas impacted by that to deliver to and protect residents. Now, we've done that, but that has been extra strain. And indeed, in unaccompanied asylum seeker children, we're a gateway authority, but we're not properly funded as a gateway authority. The Leader and I met with the then Immigration Minister to discuss this, and council officers have been pursuing the matters with civil servants. But sitting here today, we have the order of a £5 million a year pressure due to that underfunding. And of course, in terms of our council housing, we've seen that the rigid implementation, maintenance of the borrowing cap, and the failure to fund fire safety works has put pressure on our ability to deliver to our council tenants. And each year we have to borrow money to make sure that we provide the schools that this borough needs because of the inadequate funding from central government. Now, in terms of the budget, I've sort of highlighted some of the main areas of growth and savings. And as you can see in the growth, what we've done is we've invested in the areas that matter, the areas where people need the services most, such as children's services and adult services, special education needs. And in terms of the savings, they come significantly from contract savings, better use of assets, emergency accommodation costs being reduced by the reduction in numbers and the use of the homelessness reduction grant and our innovative One Croydon Alliance for older people's services, as well as efficiencies, better contract management and back office savings across the council. So in short, what we've done through this, and what you won't see in the savings, what you won't see in cuts, is things that affect directly the front line and the maintenance of services, such as our libraries and street cleaning. In terms of the capital expenditure, we are proud this administration is investing in the borough's future, and the council is doing its role as part of that, delivering 1,000 homes, of which 50% will be affordable through our own development company, Brick by Brick, and also the new Fairfields Halls. Enhancing the infrastructure so we can really compete, develop and attract new businesses, new residents, as well as improving the lives of existing residents. And I do want to pause on the contrast that is the New Addington. In the 8 years of Tory administration, we saw nothing invested in New Addington, quite frankly. It was pennies. More was spent on consultants than actual improvement initiatives. We are set over the next 3 years to invest some 42 million in New Addington, and that will mean that over the 8 years of this administration and the next Labour administration, we will have invested 50 million in New Addington, showing that this area, which has often been neglected, is truly getting its fair share through a new community and leisure centre, through a new healthy living hub, and through renewed community facilities in Fieldway. So, what a contrast to the previous 8 years. And I'm very proud that we are maintaining our ward budgets that have made such a difference across the borough, and putting the funding into devolution so that we are really strengthening communities, really delivering across the borough for all. So now we come to council tax. Given what I said about the grants and the increasing needs, we have to be realistic. And it's interesting to note that the Local Government Association has today produced figures that 147 of the 152 local authorities who have social care responsibility are implementing an increase in the adult social care precept. Indeed, 64 of them, so 40% of them, are going at the maximum 3%. And in fact, 108 of those local authorities, so over 70%, are increasing local council tax by the maximum allowed without a referendum. That is the context. And indeed, I think I can do little better than quote Lord Porter, the Conservative Lord who chairs the LGA, when he says that the extra income this year will help offset some of the financial pressures that they face. But the reality is that many councils are now beyond the point where council tax can meet the needs. And that is the truth. By the stewardship that we have given, we are not in that position, I'm glad to say. We are needing to increase council tax and the adult social care precept. And I'm actually proud that the GLA precept is going up to deliver for more police, because 81% of that increase is for the police and 16% for the fire services, giving this borough and London the essential services that they deserve and that we all rely on. And the fact is that with these council tax increases, we're being honest with the people of Croydon. We're not indulging in £25 gimmicks, but we are showing that to deliver the services that we know matter to the people of Croydon, to protect the vulnerable and to invest in our futures, that this was necessary and that this is a balanced budget that delivers that for Croydon and for all our futures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Richard, have you got anything to add?
Just a few words, Leader. So, page 61 to 64 of the pack you have tonight sets out my formal view as Section 151 officer on the budget for 2018-19. I just want to highlight for Cabinet some key areas for consideration. Firstly, on reserves and balances. So the budget setting process for any year has to be considered in the context of the financial standing of the authority, and in that context, its balance sheet and its usable reserves. It's important to understand the position on reserves both now and in comparison to 2010-11, the year our grant started to reduce. So in 2010-11, this Council had general fund balances of 11.6 million, 38 million in earmarked reserves and 7.6 million of capital reserves. So total usable reserves of roughly £57 million. In the last audited accounts, 2016-17, the Council had equivalent figures of general fund balances of 10.7 million, earmarked reserves of 30 million and capital reserves of 7 million, so roughly £48 million. The report before you tonight shows we're forecasting general fund balances to fall by 1.2 million. I'm expecting earmarked reserves to fall by approximately 10 million, however capital reserves to increase by 15 million. So our usual reserves back up to approximately 52 million. For context, our net budget is 267 million. So this shows, I believe, that our reserves have held firm despite 8 years of challenging grant cuts and rising demand. Unlike other authorities, we haven't been using reserves to plug major holes in our budget year on year. So, although our reserves are lower than other authorities, they're not reducing by any significant level. The changes introduced in the last spending review, which allowed authorities to use capital receipts on revenue spend that delivered savings or reduced future demand, in effect means capital reserves are now much more akin to earmarked reserves. This authority expects to receive over 30 million in capital receipts over the next 3 years from the sale of land associated with new housing, which again gives confidence that funds are available for investment in delivering change in the medium term. So moving on to key areas of the 18-19 budget, growth of over 25 million has been allocated, with nearly 20 million to People Department services. Detailed work has been undertaken to forecast costs based on current and future demand projections. Appendix A to the report sets out the breakdown of that growth, and clearly a large amount is going into adult and children's social care. This ensures the budget reflects a realistic level of demand and also clearly supports the actions in the Children's Improvement Plan. Savings of over 70 million are also set out in Appendix A for 2018-19. Each saving has a clear plan for delivery and is understood and owned by the relevant Cabinet member and senior officer. Given the improvement journey we're on in relation to children's services, no savings are set out in this area. As Council Hall has covered, significant savings are being delivered from South London Waste Partnership, our One Alliance partnership, and continued savings on our assets. Moving on to council tax. Council tax levels are clearly a political choice, but it's important to understand how important council tax income is to the Council's budget. An additional 12.3 million is being raised in 2018-19 from council tax, both as a result of the proposed increase in the charge, but also from increases in the council tax base, the number of properties liable for council tax, and also increases in our collection rate. Just under 2/3 of our budget requirement comes from council tax income. Just to finish off, in respect to risks, there are risks that we face in terms of the budget delivery for 18-19. Demand in social care remains a huge long-term challenge for the whole of local government and is key to the long-term sustainability of councils. To deal with this in 18-19, contingency has been increased to reflect this risk by £1 million to £2 million. Another key risk is in relation to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and our funding. Given its scale, this remains a risk, and as you'll see in the 17-18 forecast, Croydon is bearing a direct burden for our role in relation to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. As Council Hall covered, we continue to engage the Home Office, who are currently reviewing funding rates for the next financial year. The financial strategy over the medium term also has a big variable within it, which is the spending review due in 2019 and the medium-term direction of government funding to local government. I anticipate bringing the medium-term review on the budget to 2022 as part of the July review to Cabinet later in 2018. So in conclusion, I believe this is a robust, balanced budget based on reasonable estimates. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. Councillor Alison Butler.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to touch on some issues around the HRA, the housing revenue account for our council stock and housing. And Simon brought up some of these points earlier in his presentation. I think we've made it well known within this council that we've switched the delivering of our housing investment to brick by brick, and it's touched on how they're going to deliver homes and the financial payoff from that, and also the setting up of Croydon affordable homes to deliver housing using our right to buy receipts that we've been unable to use elsewhere, and how that's going to bring hundreds of homes, affordable homes, to rent to Croydon residents, and that's without subsidy. On our council stock, clearly we remain committed to delivering 100% decent homes, but also to invest in the maintenance and improvement works in order to maximise the life of the stock that we've got and ensure that people are living in proper up-to-date homes. So our repair and improvement programme for 2017-18 and going on for this year will remain the same at 27 million. There's a separate programme of responsive and cyclical repairs which are resourced through revenue funding, and that totals another 12 million. And as we've talked about many times in this chamber, we're committed, and we've finished the first block of £10 million in resources to ensure that there are sprinklers in the tallest of our blocks, and we remain committed that we believe that is essential and it is a fire safety measure that we think is important. We continue to lobby government for funding to assist with that, and we're being disappointed for the third occasion that they've actually turned us down and said it's not essential for our residents in Croydon. So the cost of this is being funded out of our reserves in the HRA. As we're all aware, the council has to continue to reduce rents by 1% per annum, and we'll be doing this year, and that's in order to lower the housing benefit bill for the government. The reduction in rents has meant the HRA needs to make reductions in its expenditure, and that's at least 13 million over the 4-year period. So as well as investing to keep our stock safe, investing to keep it at a decent home standard, we've also had to find this huge chunk that's been taken out by the enforced government reductions. It's anticipated that the additional borrowing of 11.4 million will need to take place over the next 10 years to continue to fund our planned capital works and maintain a balanced position. And the council expects to reach its borrowing cap in the next several years with delivery on the core stock investment programme. The government has announced that the cap is expected to be lifted for areas of high need in the future, but we still haven't got any further information about what areas of high need actually means, so we're unable to adjust our budget in order to take that in account, and we hope there will be some announcements from the governments confirming, and hopefully they will include Croydon. Remaining issues for the HRA, as we've spoken in the past, is we've still got hanging over our heads that sell-off of the high-value homes. We still don't know what that means for Croydon, so we need to be prepared. The right to buy receipts, there's still the same restrictions on using right to buy receipts, which means that some councils are finding it impossible to use them and have had to return them to the government along with interest. We're using ours through Croydon Affordable Homes, but we'd really like the government to look at different ways of allowing council to actually use those receipts properly. We're losing, on average, 130 homes per year by right to buy, and that means not only are we losing homes, but we're also losing the loss of income from their homes, which also needs to be taken into account. And the impact of universal credit in Croydon has also begun to have an impact on our rent collection rates. Some of the good points coming forward is something that Simon touched on earlier, and that's due to the work that we've done in homelessness and Gateway, that we have seen a reduction of our use of temporary and emergency accommodation through the prevention work the Gateway service is carrying out, and also use of better quality council-run accommodation. So that's a huge success for Croydon, and we'd like to give our thanks to all the staff who've been so involved in delivering that, and it of course means better outcomes for our residents.
Thank you very much, Alison. I mean, look, in trying to be positive with the government, it's difficult when you see those cuts and the HRA cap. Well, they're words, but there's no action. We've seen it as regards the financial support or lack of it in terms of the retrofitting of sprinklers. As Councillor Simon Hall said, we had a positive meeting with the now departed minister vis-à-vis UASC funding, but still we await anything significant in terms of extra funding from the borough. So we continue to make the case hard, but one is inclined to think the government might be distracted by Brexit and one or two other things and aren't listening to us or possibly anybody else at this stage. Okay, before we move to a decision, I'll look around the room and take... Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, we're in a slightly odd situation, an unusual situation in having Cabinet tonight and then the Council meeting tomorrow. So we will be saving most of our political commentary on this for tomorrow. I'm sure then the Borough can wait another 24 hours for that without too much problem. I have a question on People Department overspend. I just did a back-of-envelope calculation a couple of days ago based on my recollection of previous budgets, which worked out that the overspend over the last 4 years in the people budget has been 37 million. And can you just confirm that, Director of Finance, whether I've got that right or not, please?
Not off the top of my head, Councillor Pollard. I think over the last couple of years it's been close to 20 million. I can't recall what it was in 15-16 or 14-15. I can get you the figures in the morning.
Thank you. I think the borough can certainly cope without waiting to hear any more from you, Councillor Pollard, on the budget. Although I did notice if the Croydon Advertiser was correct, you were supporting parts of it. But who knows? You've opposed our budgets for the last 3 years, and Councillor Hall, I might come back to reflect on how much that might have cost the council's treasury if you had have been in the position of running the organisation. Councillor Jason Cummins.
Thank you, Leader. There's a significant amount of the justifications and explanation of the current financial position here that we have cross-party agreement on, with regard to historic underfunding, the US position, funding for school building, etc. Something I do take issue with, though, is the continued use of one graph to keep explaining the Council's position. The graph which only talks about one of the Council's funding streams. You have within your report the more accurate graph and the more accurate table on page 41 and 42. This is table 16 and graph 8, which covers the core spending power and the core spending power with relation to population, the core funding per head, spending in real terms. All of the actual overall financial position of the Council is contained accurately in that table and graph. You don't use it. You use the one that you like because it shows 74%, and you're making out to the people of Croydon that they've had their funding for the Council cut by 74%. I know your graph is, strictly speaking, accurate, but it is the presentation of the information that you are out to deceive and present a different set of circumstances to reality. Are you going to tweet that you're not using the graph that shows the whole picture, Sean? I doubt you are. Sean, I didn't say I'm opposed to accuracy.
Cummins, if we could conduct the meeting through the chair, that would probably help. And,
all I'm saying is...
Can I allow you and Councillor Fitzsimons to discuss what may or may not represent reality in the pub afterwards? But,
are you going to stop using a graph that just shows one part of the finances, or will you change to show a far more accurate one that shows the whole Council's finances? Another question, if I may. There's a significant amount of the pressure that's in this year, which is down to money that's being invested in children's services. Given that this wasn't in the plan in previous years, this money is clearly a reaction to the Ofsted result. You don't seem to be listing anywhere that a significant amount of the pressure in next year's finances is down to failures in the council from the last couple of years. Why not?
Well, I think one could take the view that it's precisely because we've got a balanced budget, even in these tough times, that where we face the need to take decisions in terms of investment in year, we had the ability to do that. And I do think, if you want to have that fairer conversation you seek, then whether it's children's services, adult services, or any other service of this council, you do need to reflect on the actions your government has taken and the situation we inherited 2014. When Councillor Fisher did say, and we've got the quote, I think, up on my office wall somewhere, isn't it? The council had a £100 million fiscal black hole, and he didn't know how anybody was going to do anything about solving it. And that was the Croydon Advertiser, 28th of May 2014. But it's very much on the public record from Councillor Fisher. I'll bring in Councillor Hall to take some of the points you've made in a little bit. But personally, I mean, you can pick a number in terms of your discussion on reality with Sean, but I've always used the figure of a 50% cut to the council's budget. But there have been swathing cuts to this council's budget from the Conservative government. And as Councillor Hall again alluded to, don't take our word for it. Just read any one of Lord Porter's speeches from the last year, the Conservative leader of the Local Government Association. And he puts it actually far more graphically than anyone on this side often would. I've seen Councillor Oliver Lewis.
Thanks, Leader. I'd just like to focus for a moment on capital expenditure and 50 million invested by this administration in New Addington. More investment in New Addington is something that I and Councillor Woodley, and I know Councillor Hall and Bonner also have fought for, because people in New Addington deserve the best services and facilities. Can I just ask you, Councillor Hall, to just explain in a little bit more detail where that investment is going, and the contrast between the approach of this administration and the previous administration? I was shocked to hear you say that they frittered more on consultants than they spent on New Addington.
And if you want to respond to any of Councillor Cummins or Pollard's, if there was a question in there, there might have been.
Well, I think there was in Councillor Cummins, so if I cover those first. One of the things, I mean, the graph that I showed was factually accurate, and you've acknowledged that. Your criticism that it only shows one aspect. And, if you'd prefer me to say that there's been, if you take all funding from central government to this council, in real terms, a 42% cut over just the last 4 years and a £45 million cash cut, and that to be the headline. I'm quite relaxed about that because it makes the point there has been, at a time when this, I repeat, when this borough is growing and needs are increasing and there's been inflation, to see the scale of reduction, both in cash and real terms, of funding from central government in the last 4 years, which was a continuation of the massive cuts made in the previous 4 years, has had huge effects for our ability to deliver services, and that's why we have had to make, over the last 4 years, the tough decisions to make sure that we can deliver to the people of Croydon. So, I mean, in terms of children's services, we are investing in it. We have recognised that it needs that investment, as well as, because we had the council's finances under control, being able to kick-start the improvement plan this year with investment from transformation funds to make sure that the work in terms of the improvement got kick-started. And the debate about children's services and when the problem started and so on and so forth is one that we can rehearse many times, but the idea that it suddenly all miraculously started in May 14, having been an absolute panacea before then, is frankly ridiculous. Turning to Councillor Lewis's point. I mean, the amounts spent in the 8 years when we were in opposition, and I can speak as having been a councillor for that whole period, were frankly derisory. We had lots of reviews, investigations, consultations about what should happen. We had a total failure to properly defend the Village Green application, which has delayed so much for the people of New Addington. But we, above all, had lots of consultation and no action. Clearly, the Community and Leisure Centre, which gross cost, including the housing being built, will be of the order of £30 million, is providing a state-of-the-art facility that New Addington deserves, frankly. The fact that we are now going to have a healthy living hub with the council and the NHS working in partnership to deliver that in one of the areas that the Director of Public Health identified as having the greatest health inequality is, for me, a sort of huge progress. And the fact that in Fieldway, where we're about to have the new SEN school, the very tired and frankly time-expired facilities there are going to be replaced by modern facilities that will really meet the community's aspirations and allow all the excellent work that goes on there to continue and in fact to increase. It is, for me, to be hugely welcomed. What it shows overall, just like the investment we've done in street cleaning, just like things like the outdoor gym that we've had recently with support of the 4 councillors' ward budgets, it shows what a difference having a Labour council has made to the people of New Addington, and will carry on with under the next Labour administration.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. I've seen Councillor, I'll take them in the order I've seen them. So I've seen Councillor Robert Cadden, then Councillor Vinnie Mohan, then I'll go round again.
Thank you, Leader. It was great to read earlier today about how the first sprinklers have been installed and retrofitted in our tower blocks. That's absolutely fantastic news. My understanding is that the London Fire Brigade have described sprinklers as sort of must-have, essential items. I mean, clearly they can literally be the difference between life and death, and that the Conservative government was going to meet the cost of essential measures post-Grenfell. How on earth can the Conservative government now turn around and say that they're not going to meet the cost of these essential sprinklers? It sounds absolutely disgraceful.
It is, and I'll bring Councillor Alison Butler in on that issue in a minute, Robert, but it is absolutely, I think, indefensible, utterly indefensible. Councillor Vinnie Mohan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I have a couple of questions for a couple of your individual cabinet members. First, Councillor Collins, I know you make a great play in your budget papers about the fact that you're saving £5 million from the street cleaning and waste contract. But isn't what you're actually doing is just moving the money from your revenue expenditure for new street cleaning equipment to your capital expenditures? So essentially, you're not making any saving, and while you're showing a decrease in revenue, you're essentially moving the money to capital. Secondly, your budget shows a line item of £170,000 reduction because of a saving because of closure of neighbourhood recycling centres. Could you please articulate which recycling centres are actually going to close? Because I think you make a great play about your don't mess with Croydon, and on top of it, if you're closing recycling centres in certain neighbourhoods, that's quite shocking. And then I've got a couple of questions for Councillor King in his portfolio. Firstly, when we're talking about funding, and we've recently heard that the government is funding Network Rail's consultation and detailed design work for the East Croydon station improvements and the infrastructure improvements. So would you take this opportunity to thank the efforts of Chris Philp MP and the former MP Gavin Barwell in successfully lobbying government in ensuring that this funding has come through? My other questions to you are regarding the sort of specific budget line items.
You said you had 2 questions. I think we're up to 7 so far.
2 cabinet members, I said. If you, And then my other questions to you, Councillor King, is your budget shows an increase in pay and display parking charges of £240,000 over 2 years. Now, that's quite significant, and I was wondering what pay and display parking charges are actually going to increase, and why has there been no, any kind of consultation or anything of any increase you're planning in these charges? And secondly, your budget papers also show that you're going to lose £500,000 of parking charges because of the car park closures due to brick by brick being used to using car parking space to build housing. So don't you think with this sort of now that you've told us what the financial impact is of building on car parks, building housing on car parks, do you think it's time to sort of reverse your policy and actually not protect vital car parking spaces, especially in the town centre? Thank you.
I think we'll see a lot of that as a contribution, but there was some questions in there. I just cannot help but, I sit with amazement when I hear the piece about Chris Philp. I mean, if Palace had beaten Tottenham yesterday, I'm sure he'd have claimed credit for it. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, myself and Councillor King between us have had numerous joint meetings and God knows how many separate meetings with Network Rail. It's been an absolute priority and a lobbying priority of this administration. And sometimes, actually, I think the often hard working and don't get enough public thanks for this stuff. The officers of this council who've worked tirelessly on pulling together that Network Rail deal as well, and to see Chris Philp going around claiming credit for anything that happens to be good, as I said, even a Palace goal in the borough, and taking responsibility for nothing is quite extraordinary, and explains why you're in opposition locally and soon will be nationally. But you've made a number of statements there, and there was a question or two for Councillor Stuart King in there somewhere, so I'll bring in Councillor King at this point because to both respond to yourself and with any other contribution he wishes to make at this stage. Stuart.
Thank you, Leader, and thank Councillor Mohan for his question. The Leader set out very ably the record that this administration has around the lobbying and the very effective lobbying that we've introduced on the Brighton Main Line upgrade. If I were to be a bit more charitable, I might acknowledge that there was one meeting with the Minister where Councillor Newman and I were present, but with all of the MPs for the borough present, rather than just Chris Philp. And I think at the time we did thank him for playing his part, coming along. As we did for Gavin Barwell, who arrived late but nonetheless was there as part of that combined Croydon lobbying on behalf of our residents and our commuters. On his question about pay and display income, I think from recollection we're talking about 10 pence per transaction, so a relatively modest amount, but which does help generate income that's going to be invested over the course of the next year. And then on the matter of the loss of income from losing parking locations for brick-by-brick developments, that's a straightforward decision by this administration to prioritise homes for people that need them. And for you to use language like vital car parks being prioritised over new homes for people that need homes is exactly the sort of contrast I am glad we're going to be able to take into the elections in May. I'm happy to be on the side of homes. You can be on the side of car parks.
Very well put indeed, and we'll leave you to reflect on that, Councillor Viddy Mohan. I've seen Councillor Lynn.
I'll come in when the chair calls me in, and I'll answer you when I'm ready.
You did ask 7 questions, so we'll get round to them. I've seen Councillor Lynn Hale, Councillor Shafi Khan. Sorry, I said Yvette Hopley. Sorry, Councillor Shafi Khan, Councillor Pat Ryan. Thank you very much, and then we'll go from there again. Thank you. Yvette.
Thank you. In reference to Appendix 6.1, 3.18, the contract of inflation of 1.950 million, I wonder if you could explain how that figure, how you came to that figure, built over some of the long-term contracts. It seems quite a vague number over quite a number of contracts. And similarly, over 3.22, the inflation for learning and disability and mental health. I'm wondering how you're going to derive at a figure, bearing in mind you're looking at things on a case-by-case basis. My concern is that there could be considerable overspends, bearing in mind the level of detail doesn't appear to be there. Then on the People Department budget, under the items here, the first item, workforce reform and transformation, creating a permanent workforce with less agency cover and costs. I know that there has been an increase in agency costs due to the failings in the Children's Service Department, and I know a number of agency staff are always also operating across the People Department. I wonder if you could give me some detail around those costs there, or savings that you've got to make, and also around the 25 to 65 disability transformation, the efficiency there. I'm not sure exactly what that figure means. It's basically around the agency and whether or not those costs are going to decrease or increase over the coming year, and what that's made up of. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we can answer some of those questions now, and we can write with the answer to others. Richard or Simon, do you want to respond on those points?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, just in terms of inflation, it's always an estimate, obviously, but what we look at is on all of the major contracts, what the inflation clauses are under those contracts, and what the indications are with our engagement with the care market to see what we believe the inflationary pressures will be. Obviously, they get negotiated on a case-by-case basis where there isn't a specific formula in the contract, and there's therefore always detailed work, and then based on that, obviously an overall estimate is made. In terms of the 25 to 65 transformation, that's actually about the work, and it links to the Think Family work that I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, which is looking at how we can deliver better life outcomes for people with, for example, stepping down, so that rather than people sitting in a residential home, they're actually in supported living, having much more of their empowered life, but also actually at lower cost to the public purse. In terms of the reference to agency, that's because in adults we're looking at a restructure which will lead to a flatter structure, and a structure that's more focused on delivering to the different parts of adult social care, but which will enable us to reduce, say, management tiers, and in particular the number of agency posts at that level.
Thank you, Simon. With apologies to our guests from on-site, but we were coming to get you soon. But I hope the tour through local government finance is proving educational. But it may not all be. I accept that. I've got a councillor. Well, I've got a number of councillors now. So if people can keep comments reasonably succinct, I've got Councillor Hamida Ali and Councillor Elisa Fleming and Councillor Shafi Khan and Councillor Pat Ryan, and then we'll see where we are after that. Yeah.
So, just briefly to say that I welcome the £10.5 million pounds of growth into children's services, and the £2.2 million in particular in relation to the SEN provision, and you spoke in detail about the new all-through provision that will be coming to the borough and the difference that will make to the lives of our young people here. Councils across the land continue to labour with a £2 billion shortfall in the cost of dealing with vulnerable children. And we continue to lobby central government for the additional funding in relation to these issues. Speaking to Onside, I'd say that we're looking forward to the arrival of Onside. They will be providing a safe and inclusive space with trained youth workers and a commitment to working with some of our most vulnerable young people and those young people with special educational needs within the borough, and a commitment to working with autism-inclusive activities and initiatives. We know that Croydon has the largest youth population in any London borough, and the importance of youth work within that, it can't be underestimated. The work that goes into working with some of our young people who are no longer engaged in school provision, and re-engaging them into the community, essentially. And, some of those young people are at considerable risk, but financial cuts, as we've said, imposed by central government have meant that they have systematically reduced youth work provision across Croydon as a result. And we're going to continue to work to try and encourage central government to restore funding for youth services right across the land, because I really believe that the work that they do makes a difference to our young people. With that in mind, this administration continues to support existing provisions, with a particular focus on the issues of gangs and tackling knife crime and unemployment. I'm pleased to announce that within my portfolio we have found the additional investment of £250,000 for a fund for grants to support seed funding for projects that will be focused on preventing young people becoming involved in knife and gang crime. We'll also look at helping those groups to acquire additional funding alongside this. And, I would like to just congratulate Councillor Hall and just say thank you, because if it wasn't for the fact that we have got a firm grip of the finances, we wouldn't be able to invest this additional money, and the difference that it's going to make to some of our most vulnerable young people in this borough cannot be underestimated. So thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. A very tough subject, but very, very positive in the inspiration I know that we took from being at the Brit School, watching that play, and the meetings we had with the young people in different areas last week. I think that is a well-chosen use of that finance. Councillor Hamida Ali.
Thank you, Leader. Like Councillor Fleming, I'd like to thank Councillor Hall and our Section 151 officer and all the staff that have been involved in this budget to continue to protect our frontline services in the face of the level of austerity that we face in local government is a real achievement, especially at a time when government seems only to have contempt for local government. I wanted to highlight three things in particular that relate to my responsibilities. Firstly, I want to announce that we will be investing in 20 extra enforcement officers. That won't be visible from the budget, but this is a major investment in our enforcement capacity. That's an increase of 50% and speaks to our commitment to tackle antisocial behaviour and improve the quality of life in all our neighbourhoods, particularly at a time when our partners, as Councillor Hall highlighted in his introduction, are losing resources. This will really enable us to boost the size of our uniform presence around the borough and improve their capacity to deal with issues there and then, whether that's fly tipping or dog fouling or any other form of antisocial behaviour. So important investment from this administration. Secondly, I wanted to just really welcome Councillor Fleming's, what I think is a really exciting announcement of that Community Seed Fund. Community engagement has been a really central feature of our response to serious youth violence, and we've been supporting community organisations to try and secure funding from other funds, whether it's the Home Office or from MOPAC, but to have a fund of £250,000 just for community organisations in Croydon, I think is a really important signal to communities who are concerned and are also taking action, often off their own back, to make a real difference. And I hope that that will not only help build the capacity within those community organisations, but I hope also really build confidence with them that we are really working together to tackle this really concerning problem of our young people's safety. The third thing I wanted to comment on was the line in the budget book, and Councillor Hall highlighted it as well, about the monies that we're able to continue making available either through community ward budgets but also through our ongoing community empowerment and devolution agenda, which is very positive indeed.
Thank you, Hamida, for that. Councillor Pat Ryan and then Councillor Shafi Khan.
Chair, thank you very much. And I'd like to congratulate both yourself, the Councillor Simon Hall and the Director of Finance in providing us with a detailed account of how you spend your money and the services you provided for the last year. However, Chair, I've only had one mention, that's by Councillor Raleigh, about how the effective austerity had on the services over the past year. This austerity measures, as you well know, this dreaded austerity has been installed by this Conservative Tory administration in the country, and no sign of giving up. How much is it really affecting the service you are providing to the residents here in Croydon?
Thank you, Pat. Well, I would just disagree with you slightly, because I think that Councillor Hall's very opening graph that upset Councillor Cummins so much showed the true cost of austerity with the 50% cut that, or 50 to 74% cut we've seen to this council's budget, and it's had a huge impact. And it has taken some very careful management of the finances. But people out there are tired of austerity. They're tired of cuts. We've seen the appalling waste and collapse of companies like Carillion, and which are and the threat that posed at one point to all the libraries in this borough. There's a human impact behind these stories. The pressures on family budgets are immense, and so, yeah, I think we're acutely aware that's the backdrop we're working against. And we've seen the chaos in Northamptonshire, and we are, striving hard to make sure that never happens here. But it would be wrong to say that, there hasn't been an impact. There's clearly been an impact on what we can do with the public's money. So I think, austerity is there, and sadly, without repeating it all again, there is precious little indication, as you say at the moment, the government are listening to this council or any other council in terms of funding. Councillor Shafi Khan.
Thank you, Leader. Can I express my indignation that the opposition doesn't welcome the fact that we are producing a very prudent and balanced budget here. You are so quiet, and it is really a bit shocking that you are not welcoming that, having all this pressure, as Councillor Simon Hall outlined, that we are facing in terms of population growth, inflation growth, and special needs for older people, special educational needs, all this pressure, having all this pressure, we are managing very well by following as our efficiency strategy, as Councillor Hall outlined, those 8 bullet points, that we are managing money quite well. You should be joining us, welcoming that fact. Anyway, Leader, I actually wanted to talk about something different. It is really disappointing to see the final settlement grant fail to recognize the tremendous pressure we are having in terms of children's cares. And as the Lord Porter presides over the LGA, and they have done a survey, and according to that survey, if I quote from the paper, that 75% of council are overspending children's care budget, and not only that, is 140% increase in number of protection inquiries. And you all know that historically in Croydon, we have inherited and we had to deal with this education, health and care plan proceedings and all these issues. And I'm really grateful to Councillor Simon Hall and the Leader to have that money so that we could invest to tackle those issues. And it is another fact that we did not take the lying down from the national government. We manage our budget really prudently, and also we have innovative way of working, and we are going to invest where the Tories actually neglected and disseminated our youth services. And this week sometime, we're going to start the demolition work of the Whitehorse Youth Centre, where will be hopefully open early 2019, the youth zone, where the council is investing 3.25 million. And not only that, council is investing on top of that yearly 300,000 running costs. I think these are the tremendous achievements, having all this pressure, and you should be welcoming these things. And it's really disappointing to see that you're keeping quiet tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Shafi Khan, and I think that was Councillor Pat Ryan's point as well. It is the hypocrisy, I think, of the opposition who support those cuts from their government. And then is it when you look at cutting youth services by 2 million over 5-6 years under the previous council, that has an impact. And in terms of the prevention agenda, it's a huge challenge, but I think it is rank hypocrisy. We're starting to come to the end of the discussion. I've seen Councillor Louisa Woodley, then I've got Councillor Alison Butler to respond to Councillor Robert Canning's point, then Manju, then Councillor Sherwin Chowdhury. If everyone could keep it brief, yeah. And then Councillor King briefly, and then Councillor Collins. So everyone's got 2 minutes each, and I'm going to leave you in the capable hands just for 2 minutes of Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Leader. I couldn't let this pass without actually thanking Councillor Hall for his work on the budget, and to thank the staff in the LIFE team for the fabulous work that they're doing in the One Alliance, and just to say that we've had, to repeat that we've had people from NHS England down, and they've been so impressed with our figures. And just to remind people of the figures, during April to August 2017, the average number of delayed transfers of care was 29. And then in September 2017, when we implemented the LIFE team working in One Alliance, this number started to drop, and it dropped in September to 23. And by December, it was down to 11. And the number attributed to adult social care went down from an average of 11 down to 3 in December, and that's all down to the work of the LIFE team. But the delayed cares days, which was running at an average of almost 900, that dropped to just over 500 in December. And it's so much so that it's been recognised as a model of good practice to be copied nationally. But I just needed to say that, and to thank the hard work being done by members of the LIFE team. And I know that Councillor Hopley is concerned about the rollout to the south of the borough, but the contracts have been signed and it is being rolled out. And just to again give a few figures as regards agency staff, because you did ask about agency staff. And I'll specifically focus on social workers. Of the 212 social workers that we have in adult social care, 74 are agency, and that's down from approximately half that it used to be in previous years. We've had the changes there was something to do with the way that people claimed and self-assessment, whether they were employed, whether they were self-employed or through agencies, or being employed through the council. And we managed to persuade most of the social workers who were working through agencies in adult social care to be employed by the council. So we've had tremendous success with working with social workers in adult social care. I will send you all the figures as regards the measures we're taking to persuade people, to encourage people to continue working for the council rather than working for agencies. And I think now that they can see the tremendous the outcomes, the success that they're having through the live teams, through the personal independence coordinators, I think people are even more encouraged to be employed by the council rather than be employed through agencies. But I'll stop there because I know the leader said I only had 2 minutes. I could go on.
I think you went a little over. Councillor Manju Shahul Hamid.
Thank you. Following on from what Councillor Woodley has said, I would like to thank Councillor Simon Hall and Richard Simpson for producing the balanced budget and working with Councillor Mark Watson for delivering the fantastic services in my current portfolio in economy and jobs. The Council continues to build on its ambitious plan for economic growth, and Croydon is home to a number of international business clusters, including financial services, insurance, engineering, digital and tech, and government. As you already know, HM and Revenue and Customs have now moved to Croydon with 2,500 employees at 1 Ruskin Square. This is yet another sign of confidence in Croydon, following on from the EDF Energy, the Body Shop and Superdrug, which have also taken over new and refurbished offices in the area. And look at Westfield, it is going to bring 7,000 jobs in our borough, ensuring that local people are benefiting from the economy. And like the leaders say, we are London's growth borough. Croydon's Good Employer Charter aims to boost the local economy through support to the local supply chain, creation of job opportunities, ensuring employees are paid a fair wage, goes on from strength to strength, with 34 organisations now obtaining accreditation, with a further 43 having pledged to work together towards in spreading the best employment practices throughout Croydon. So the Charter aims to have more businesses accredited and focus activity on the Council's Tier 1 contractors. We are also looking at co-location of Job Centre Plus. It's actually in this paper. It will improve services for our residents in that the main job centre provision in the town centre will be the same space as the Access Croydon space. So it will be providing joined-up services for our hardest to reach to help residents. Croydon's vision for growth is inclusive, with opportunity and fairness at the heart of growth plans, and ambition to ensure that all residents are able to share in the success of the borough. As a London living wage employer, the Council is committed to working with the business community to tackle in-work poverty. The Council is the lead accountable body for the South London Work and Health Programme. This is a devolved programme for funding for employment support focused on individuals and health conditions and disabilities. And like Councillor Woodley has said, I could go on, but there are so many positive things that's happening. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Manju. Councillor Sherwin-Chowdhury.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'd just like to highlight about the library, which is because this budget took a long time to produce. Of course, I needed to find the money where it's servicing the budget. But I think thank you, Cabinet Member Simon Hall, for allocating nearly £700,000 for capital funding for library in short space of time, which is wrong decision made by Tory administration and failure a lot of our buildings especially. Can I ask one thing? Is this maybe in future, during this financial year, if any other library, like especially our Norbury, if they needed any money, a little bit extra money, probably can fund this library for your special reserve somewhere maybe?
Well, I think the lobbying award of the night goes to Sherwin, but I mean, Councillor Hall can speak for himself. But clearly, one of the advantages of bringing the library service back in house is that we will now be able to take those decisions about investing in the buildings as well as the service, and I'm sure that even in these tough times, that is part of Councillor Hall's. In fact, I know it's part of Councillor Hall's thinking as we move forward. But I'll bring him in briefly at the end. Councillor King, just wanted to come back.
Just briefly, if I can. So, unlike Councillor Pollard, I haven't made it onto the speakers list tomorrow, so I can't defer comments for 24 hours. So, I'll take the opportunity of addressing Cabinet with them. Principally, you've heard me mention before that safer streets and a clean environment are important to all of us who live in Croydon, but it's particularly important to those most vulnerable Croydon residents, so young people, the elderly, people living in the poorer parts of our borough. And so as councillors meet today and tomorrow to set the budget, I'm particularly pleased that we've got measures in the budget that support our desire to bring safer streets and a cleaner environment to our borough. In particular, the 3,500 new trees that we're going to be planting over the next 5 years. Trust me, if I could plant them myself, I would plant every single one of them. It was absolutely thrilling to be able to plant amongst the first of them in Norwich Road, in Thornton Heath. And that was because in planting them in that location, we're demonstrating that we are placing air quality as an important priority. So a lot of the new street trees are going to be planted where air quality is already at its poorest, because we know that new trees are a great way to clean and green our streets. And the other thing I think probably worth mentioning, so again in the papers, in the capital programme, the near £1.4 million that we're going to be investing in safer cycle routes and other measures to get us out of our cars and onto bikes as part of a £20 million cycle strategy. As colleagues have said, there's plenty more that I could talk about. I won't. Just a couple of the examples of how we are making our streets safer and our environment cleaner with this budget.
Thank you, Stuart. Huge green agenda, and it was good to see the palm trees as well on the Wadden estate yesterday morning when we were out there, which I think we'll give you credit for as well. Blooming. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Just in answer to Councillor Mowen's question, for the first time in 15 years we've invested in our household recycling centres, making them much more friendly to use. The reason that we're taking away the neighbourhood recycling centres is basically we've been listening to local residents like those at Ashburton Park that don't want those facilities right on their doorstep, being constantly fly-tipped and not being used correctly. It's a move that most councils across the country are making. But in recognition of that, we intend to be increasing the facilities for householders to recycle on their own doorsteps by over 50%. And we are, in the course of the next year, through the new contract, making sure that residents have got much more facilities at the doorstep to recycle. And it does make a difference having a Labour Council dealing with the budget, because between 2010 and 2014, your side embraced austerity. And if you want the reality of embracing austerity compared to investing in services and actually making a difference, I'll give you two real human examples of that. First of all, we employed more enforcement officers, and as Councillor Hamid Ali has said, we're employing even more. Those are people that actually work for the council, take pride in their job, and actually have achieved over 188 prosecutions, thousands of fines and some really good work. During your spell in power, you employed a private company called Kingdom, who just went around fining people for dropping cigarette butts. So there's a direct example. Another direct example is that we've employed more monitoring officers on the contract for Veolia. Those two monitoring officers, and we'll mention their names, Tom Lawrence and Jackie Agger, first-class staff, who the council, members of the public have actually commented that when they have a problem with a miscollection or anything, these are first-class staff. And the result of that much more sensible monitoring is our streets are actually factually cleaner. They are actually enforced, and we enforce penalties on Veolia. In the 4 years you were in power, you ran down the number of monitoring officers. You didn't do any monitoring at all on the contract to any degree. Didn't issue any penalties. This administration has done £500,000 worth of penalties on Veolia. So we've got them on their toes, you didn't have. In terms of, I'd like to thank Councillor Hall for the capital investment that he's made and the prudent way he's looked at things, because I'm now unable tonight to make an announcement, not for our manifesto in 2019, but happening this year, and that is that we are going to give all the residents of Croydon free bulky waste collections and one white goods collection. I think that's a significant contribution on our part to try and tackle fly tipping. We have listened to people on this issue, but I will say, if any members of the public are watching, this is a deal between us, the council, and yourselves, because it's not a carte blanche to carry on fly tipping. We're saying to you, for the vast majority of residents that do use the bulky waste service correctly and don't fly tip, we understand that there are people taking advantage that have fly tipped, thinking, oh, well, the council are just going to come and pick it up. Because magnificently, we pick up 87% of reported fly tips in 48 hours. And so that's something I think we will be very proud to mention again tomorrow night, and we hope residents embrace it, use it properly, and say to others that aren't using it, there is a free bulky waste collection. You don't need to fly tipping our road. And just finally, I like to declare what side I'm on tonight, as Councillor King did. I'm on the side of invested in services, and quite clearly your side opposite, which we'll be reminding the public of, are on the side of austerity, which your party believes in. And that's reality, Jason. You can't escape from the policies of your party. You have to own up sometimes to believing in what your party do, and that is austerity and cuts.
I think Councillor Cummins has got responsibility for the whole of London, I understand, so he's going to have quite a lot of answering to do on May the 4th. But Councillor Hall, briefly, do you want to sum up and remind us, in terms of the last 3 budgets we've had here, what the running total is in terms of our colleagues opposite?
Thank you, Leader. Just on a couple of points that came up, I'm forced, given some of what we've heard from the opposition, to recall that in the 4 years of austerity when the Tories were the administration, that they, out of children's services, which isn't just children's social care, but children's services, they actually had budgets that took £14 million out of those areas. So when they talk about need to invest and need to prioritise, let's not forget that. And to Councillor Chowdhury's point, well done for, as ever, being the voice of Norbury in this chamber. But one of the things that, having brought the speedy work, and thank you ever so much to all the officers who worked so hard to make the smooth transition of bringing the libraries back in-house after Carillion's failure, because it was a superb effort by all those involved. We can now make the use of those buildings because, as the Leader alluded to, one of the things that I've long regretted is that these magnificent buildings, which are at the heart of so many communities, are used and available to the community for so few hours a week. And we now have the opportunity, and that may well involve capital investment in due course, to really make the use of the most of those buildings, whether it's bringing council staff closer to communities, whether it's for community groups, whether it's for other opportunities in terms of different council services and bringing them closer. We have a real opportunity with those buildings to do that, and that's an example of what this administration has done and is committed to doing. I was reflecting over the weekend about some of the positions that the opposition have taken in terms of the prior year's increase in council tax and implementation of the adult social care precept, their position on things like charging for green garden waste, the reform of parking charges, our approach to assets and so on. And I very quickly got that there would be an annual gap of, even if they didn't vote against this year's increase, of some probably in excess of £25 million a year. Now, that figure's interesting because, of course, if you multiply that by the 4 years of an administration, you kind of get to the same 100 million that the then leader of the party was quite open at admitting. At the same time, of course, as he took an 11k secret pay rise, notwithstanding, and that their administration put a tried to bribe the people of Croydon with a £25 one-off council tax reduction. So, it's a rather interesting comparison, isn't it, between this administration, which has got the grip on finances, which is being honest with residents, which is treating residents with the respect that they deserve, and the opposition. So, all in all, we've had very good contributions tonight. But what this is, as I said earlier, a budget for the residents of Croydon now, delivering the services that matter the most to them, protecting the vulnerable, and one that is building a borough for all our futures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you to yourself and all the officers and the team involved in this from all of us. Can we move to the recommendations, Cabinet, and can we agree the 2.99 increase in council tax? Thank you. The 2% increase on the adult social care. And then I'm not going to read them out, but can we agree everything from 3 downwards on recommendation 1? Thank you. And can we then move to 1.2 and agree the including the council tenants, the recommendations there to go to council? 1.2, is that agreed? And all contained within it. Thank you. And then moving to 1.3, we just asked to note the contributions or the comments there, if we can do that. Thank you very much, and they'll go forward to tomorrow night's council meeting. If we can move rapidly on now to a hugely important project for this borough, and one I know everyone's going to be very proud of, and I think you know, something that's already been referred to several times this evening. Page 177, an update on the Legacy Croydon Youth Zone, and we got some of the young people involved in that project with us tonight. Welcome again, and you know, I'm glad you're still here. You've passed some sort of stamina test there. Councillor Lisa Fleming.
Thank you. So it is genuinely my greatest pleasure to introduce the update on the Council's partnership with Onside in delivering Croydon's Legacy Youth Zone. So at the 18th of January 2016 meeting, the Cabinet agreed to contribute £3.25 million as a one-off capital investment into the venture. The full £6.5 million has now been secured, and work shall begin in the building of our state-of-the-art youth zone within the coming. Well, I'll let that announcement come forward from somebody else. It will offer young people in Croydon a fantastic range of world-class facilities and opportunities to enjoy sports in the forecourt sports hall. Other facilities include a gym, a 3G kick pitch. The youth zone will be open every evening all year round for young people aged 8 to 19 years old and 25 years for those with additional needs. There's a small annual membership fee of £5 and then a payment of 50p per visit. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all that have been involved in developing the youth zone thus far, and that has gone right from the naming of the centre right through to the designing of the building. The report asks that you note the progress that has been made with the development of the Legacy Youth Zone. You are going to have a short presentation by some of the young people from Onside in relation to the development of the site. But I also want to just hand over and give you an opportunity to speak further about some of the work that has happened recently in relation to Onside rather. So if I just pass you over.
So, Jamie, if we could introduce yourself, and then you'll introduce the young people with us as well. Yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you to the whole Cabinet for the opportunity to come and give you an update tonight. So my name is Jamie Masraf. I'm the Project Director for Onside, and today is a big day for the Youth Zone in Croydon, because today is really the first day where it becomes reality, with construction starting today after the period with getting all that ready. Now we are starting to build the youth zone that will be going up over the next 12 to 14 months. So it's really a big day for Onside. It's a big day for Croydon's young people. We're now to update you with some of the latest information that's actually updates from what's in this report. In this report, it talks about having raised £6 million with the generous contribution from the Council. I'm now delighted to say we have now raised £6.55 million. That's the full capital sum that we need to build this incredible facility for young people. So it just shows you the resonance that having a facility such as this dedicated to young people in Croydon has to funders that we've been talking to build it. We also are delighted to say that following our tendering exercise, we have Armfield Construction has been appointed to develop the youth zone. Armfield have got a great track record of developing community and educational facilities, and we believe they'll make a great partner to develop the facility. There has been, in the programme, it talks about a kind of an opening date of April 2019. Unfortunately, that's going to be pushed back slightly. We had some issues with squatters on the site. I'm pleased to say that's now been resolved. So we have taken possession of a free site, but that has pushed us back slightly. So we're now looking at late spring, early summer, when we will look to open the doors. open the doors to the facility. And I don't really want to talk too much more about what we've been doing, because really what I want to hand you over to is to members of our Young People's Development Group. Young people have been with this project every step of the way from the start, involved in many different aspects of it. So I'm really pleased to say that we have two members of that Young People's Development Group. We have Cadian and Angel here today. We also have Chinello, who's been very much involved with the project. So what I would like to do is I'd like to hand them over, who are just going to do a bit of a short presentation before opening up to the Cabinet for questions.
Hi, we are the Young People's Development for Croydon Youth Zone. I'm Cadian and I've been a part of this development group for about 2 years now.
I'm Angel. I've been involved for 1.5 years and I'm also running for Young Mayor.
My name is Chinello and I've been involved with Onside for about 2 years now. And just to highlight the opportunities that Onside have provided, I've recently joined Onside as the Youth Communications Lead, which has been funded by the Rank Foundation and Jack Petchey. So my role entails working with the communications team to help boost engagement amongst young people across the London network and online.
We were able to travel up to Wigan Youth Zone and spend some time there. It's been an amazing experience because it's given us the chance to see what it's going to be like for our youth zone, and it's just given us a really good experience to meet a lot of people in Wigan and just give us a really good insight on what we expect from our youth zone.
We also attended a recent game between Crystal Palace and Chelsea, where we spoke to the guests, including Councillor Newman, about our involvement and presented Wilfred Zaha with the man of the match. Also, we had a night tube challenge where we raised money for the young people to have a lifetime experience on tour ships. We had 3 sessions with Zach Agency, creating some designs for the hoardings of the youth zone site. We discussed how we would like the hoardings to look like. There will be across 6 boards within the themes Pride in Croydon, branding, and what the youth zone will be to others. We just had our last session last week. It was really fantastic, but you have to wait to see.
The great news is that we are officially on site today, and I joined Ben from the development group, Councillor Newman and Jamie from Onside to announce this. We will be involved in the groundbreaking ceremony soon, and we really can't wait for people around the buildings. We really can't wait to show people around the building site later this year. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much. And what I remember, it seems a long time ago now, from going up to the onside in Wigan, was just how much the young people themselves were actually driving the project and making it happen. And it's great to see that's already the case with you guys down here before we're actually on site. So it's I get inspired every time we have a conversation about it. And for the football fans amongst you, that was Palace's first win of the season. So I don't know. I mean, I think I've got a question, and then I'll see if we got any others. Which is, how much involvement are you going to be planning to have over the next year with Jamie and others in terms of what's actually going to happen inside the project once it's opened?
We have a growing group of young people in our development group, which has grown to about 8 members now. And so over the course of the year, they'll be working, I suppose now that they've passed the stage of the hoardings, which you'll see soon, they'll continue to work together to kind of enforce the ideas that will go into the youth zone. And with the support of the Onside team as well, the Young People's Development Group will continue to grow, and hopefully they'll go on to be ambassadors within the youth zone.
Thank you. Maria.
Thank you very much, Sheila. I'd just like to thank everyone involved this evening. It certainly sounds like a very exciting project. A question really about, you have a date for next year for opening, is that correct? Do you have a confirmed date?
Yeah, so we're looking at a date. So the building, basically our build programme, we're starting now, and our build programme will last until mid-March, until our practical completion date. But what we don't do is we don't open the doors to the youth centre immediately when the building is finished. We need to make sure with a facility this size and with a big staff team and volunteer team, we need to make sure we really bed that in and make sure it's working properly before we open our doors formally. So that period, which we call our soft opening period, that lasts between 8 to 12 weeks. So we're expecting our grand opening to be towards the back end of May or the start of June, depending on the exact date when practical completion happens. That's not to say we will be holding events prior to that with local community groups, with local residents and local schools as well. So there will be activities happening within the youth zone before then, but the grand opening will be at that point.
Thank you for that. Councillor David Wood.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to all the young people and everyone here in Onside. Just want to say how much I welcome this announcement and welcome the lead from the Leader and from the Council on this, which is really, really hugely exciting development for our borough. And for me personally, I can't think of anything much more exciting that we've got coming up in the next few weeks. I'm a huge supporter of this project and have been for quite some while as the ward member for Selhurst. And I really do welcome the involvement of the Young People's Development Group and commend the Cabinet member for the lead that she has taken in making sure that young people's voices have been heard on this. I would just like to really ask the young people and everyone here from Onside, having been up to the Wigan facility and been hugely impressed by everything there, what could we do as councillors to help you as you go forward with this project? Because I think it's something that we should all be completely looking to be involved with. And what can we do to help you as we go forward? So that would be my question to the Young People's Development Group representatives in particular. Thank you. If they don't mind answering that question.
I suppose on behalf of the whole development group, we just would really appreciate all your support which you have been giving so far, and kind of, you know, like looking at our developments over the weeks, over the year for the opening of the youth zone, and just continue to kind of appreciate and just welcome this amazing project coming to Croydon, because we're all excited about it. And speaking on behalf of most young people that we've come across, explaining this project to them, they're really excited. So we'd welcome your support, which you are doing as well.
If I could add one point to Chinal's, which is exactly right. For us, we want to make sure the youth zone is an asset for every part of Croydon. For every part of it, and we'll be looking to make sure that young people from every part of Croydon are able to visit it. So really what we would love all councillors to be are our ambassadors, making sure that you're talking to all parts. You are the ones who you know your communities better than we ever will. So to be ambassadors for us, to talk about the amazing things going on in this building on Whitehorse Road, really that's the best possible thing that you can do for this youth zone, because we want to make sure that we are giving these opportunities to all young people in the borough.
Okay, Hamida. Then I'll come to Elisa. Hamida.
It was just a quick question. Just want to firstly echo the thanks to young people here in particular, and everyone who's involved in that Young People's Development Group. That Councillors Fleming, Gatland and Wood have also articulated. My thanks to you as well. My question, unlike Councillor Wood, having not been to Wigan, I just wonder if you could share a little bit about what struck you about the visit to Wigan and any other youth zones that you've been to, and what that's made you think about what we could see here in Croydon.
Well, I've been there about 2 times, and everyone is just so welcoming. There's so many activities, from arts, recording, the media. I had the chance to be on their radio station, which was a great achievement for me, and to perform to them, which was really great. So I'm hoping, like with our youth zone, that we can have that same impact, involving the young people from Croydon to encompass in the activities that we will have, such as music, arts and everything else. And yeah.
everyone was like felt the environment, like no one was ever down at any point. So that just brings like a lot of love to the community and everything, because when the young people are part of the community or have more love, like the community is all lively and everyone feels everything. So that's how I think the youth zone would be.
Just to add, one thing that struck us as a group was the fact that Wigan Youth Zone, or should I say the community of Wigan, what's it called? There was a 73% turnaround in antisocial behaviour. So we're looking forward to the fact that the coming of this youth zone will be able to bring a change to Croydon as a borough and kind of bring out positive vibes for not just the young people but the whole community.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, if you were as inspirational as the experience all of us who went and have been to Wigan could be, you really are going to be, the pride of Croydon. But listening to you speak tonight, frankly, you are already as inspirational as Wigan. So I can only imagine what it would be like when the project's actually up and running, and the quicker Jamie gets the JCBs down there, the better. Councillor, thank you so much again. Councillor Lisa Fleming.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. I just genuinely, wholeheartedly wanted to say thank you, not just to Jamie and Greg, because they have been a real support in the delivery of this project, but just listening to Katie and Angel and Janella, and I've had the opportunity over the last 2 years to spend time with them, and they're just testament for me to the difference that we can make to young people's lives. They are so powerful and they are eloquent in the way that they put themselves forward, and I am really, really proud to be the lead member of a borough that has fantastic young people like yourselves, and I'm really looking forward to working with you moving forward, and I'm confident that they genuinely have played a real part in developing this centre, and just like Wigan, which is a fantastic facility, I know that not to name anybody in particular, but both Angel and Katie and Janella, I know they held no punches in ensuring that we got all the best provisions within our own youth zone. So thank you so much for everything that you've done, genuinely.
Thank you very much. This is where I say you would be, of course, very welcome to stay for the remaining of the agenda, but we would understand if you had something else to do with your precious time. Cabinet, with apologies, can I just take us back to agenda item 5B and 5C, not to read in any great detail, but they were clearly considered during the course of the discussions, but we do need to formally agree the recommendations contained in 5B and 5C. Can we agree that? Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, for that. And now back to Councillor Elisa Fleming. Equally important work to update us on the Children's Services Improvement Report. Elisa.
Okay, so the Cabinet is asked to note the recommendations, in particular 1.1, which notes the Children's Services Commissioner's report, advice to the Minister, the Minister's response, and finally the outcomes from the first Ofsted monitoring visit. In particular, if I just kind of go through the headlines, and I will answer any questions. So the Commissioner's assessment was that the Council had demonstrated commitment to children's services in response to the inspection. The leader, the Chief Exec, myself, had clear intentions that children's services are now a corporate priority, and through their influence, children and young people will also be a priority of our local strategic partnership, which is committed over the next 2 years to make young people within the borough their focus, and individual boards, including the board that I chair, the Children and Families Partnership Board, have agreed that within our continuing day-to-day work, we will also commit a particular focus towards delivering the youth plan for the borough. The council should retain responsibility for managing its children's services, and it will be given the time to improve the service moving forward. The Commissioner recommended a formal agreement with Camden Council for intensive peer support to Croydon to bring support, advice and expertise to drive and improve social care practice. So the Commissioner's report came out on the 4th of December. The 19th of December, the ministerial letter, which accepted the recommendations, was produced, and the final revised direction was then issued. The Ministerial Response, just to give you a little bit of background detail in relation to that, the Minister of State accepted those recommendations from the Commissioner. He has issued a revised direction, and that came out on the 25th of January, which requires Croydon to work with Camden for at least 12 months. An initial plan covering February to March has been agreed between the two councils to get collaboration underway, and they have come to Croydon, and we have also been up to share some practice whilst longer term plans are developed, and that is to be set out through our peer support. The detail for that is going to be around April, to cover the period of April to March of next year, and that is being developed. The Commissioner will help to broker the support plans. Some of that work again has already been underway. She will provide assurance to the Minister of State that the plans will address the areas identified in the original Ofsted inspection. And just finally, we had an Ofsted monitoring visit which took place on the 12th and 13th of December. The first Ofsted monitoring visit focused on the multi-agency safeguarding hub, which is our front door into the service and the assessment service. The feedback was varied. Inspectors commented on the strong corporate response to the inspection, including additional resources that have been committed. The MASH had improved further, and the inspectors found some examples of improved practice. Risk was not always accurately identified or properly understood. One of the issues, and we've spoken about it, within a cabinet, but also within the additional sessions that have been put on for members to look at the journey of a child through children's social care, and ensuring that there is only one entrance into the MASH. So the quality of practice and management oversight was too variable, but quality assurance and case auditing activity, which wasn't accurate, we've continued to work on that. High caseloads in the assessment service were also noted. We continue to work on bringing down the assessment, the caseloads within assessments, and additional capacity has been invested there. And just finally, we have a second Ofsted monitoring visit, which is scheduled for the 20th and 21st of March. This visit will be published, and this will assess how effectively risk is identified and addressed for vulnerable young people, including those who go missing from home or care, those who are at risk of sexual exploitation, gang involvement, serious youth violence and other crimes. A number of actions in the Children's Improvement Plan relate to the focus for this visit and are being closely monitored to ensure that they are achieved. It's a tight action plan, and it's been put in place to ensure that risks are clearly identified, including areas where practice needs to be improved. So I welcome the continued support, partnership support from Camden Council, which will be a feature of this work, and they have already begun to share some of their good practice in relation to this area with us as a borough. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Can I just add as well, he's actually departed now, but the Minister, Robert Goodwill, who we had a good relationship with over the Children of Calais crisis, did respond when we said, in terms of the news, in terms of the Council's key role in managing and running the service. It would be good if we could take that or publicise with our staff that news before Christmas. And I know it wasn't particularly perhaps with some of his civil servants' work, but we are very grateful for what he did there, and I think that helped in terms of the work that's gone on. And I would just add my comments to the work that I know some of the managers in Camden are doing, and all round everybody's been very supportive there. Any questions? Councillor Pollard.
Thank you. Question for Councillor Fleming. Just want to take you back to that car crash interview you had on Radio London with Vanessa Feltz about a month ago, during the course of which you concluded the interview by assuring London that the Commissioner and the Minister had confidence in Croydon Council to continue to run its own services. And, of course, that wasn't actually the case, was it, as you've acknowledged tonight? What the Commissioner actually said was, I do not have confidence in Croydon to run it without them having the support of Camden Council. Will you now apologise for having misled the people of Croydon and the people of London?
Well, I'm going to answer that first. If I can. That is absolutely that is why, Councillor Pollard, precisely that type of politics. Your party is heading for defeat in May, and your party is heading for oblivion in London. Spurious, nasty, deceitful untruths. The ministerial decision could not have been clearer. It may not have been the decision you wanted or desired or suited your political agenda, but it was the decision that was right for this council and, far more importantly, right for the children of this borough. And I think you owe Councillor Fleming an apology for the deeply personal and vicious attacks you've wrongly mounted on her in the last few months, since the minister's decision from your government didn't clearly go the way you either anticipated or thought it should. But Councillor Fleming's more than capable of speaking for herself, so I'll bring her in. But I suggest you reflect on your comments and the nasty campaign that you personally appear to be overseeing. An absolute disgrace to politics in this borough. Councillor Fleming.
I think the only thing that I would probably really add to that is that, both the Commissioner and the Minister have shown their support towards us. The Minister's letter is in front of me, and he says that he's encouraged by the commitment the leadership of the Council has demonstrated following the inspection and the steps that have been taken to better resource and build capacity to children's services. Councillor Pollard is well aware that the deal that has been brokered is in relation to peer support, and that we have sat down to discuss particular areas that we would welcome the support of Camden to help us to work with. And as I've just spoken to, one of them happens to be around vulnerable adolescents, because they have undertaken some really good work within their own borough. We, as a local authority, have a high number of young people, indeed the highest, and so with that we have issues. I've spoken earlier today around, under your, Councillor Shafi Khan highlighted that under your watch, actually, we oversaw some serious cuts to youth provision within this borough. And we've also spoken about it at a national level and the impact that that has had, this is one of the areas that we've also decided that we need to prioritise. In relation to, to me, it just, for me really, the reason why I've decided not to take much notice of you in particular is because your desperation, because you are so clearly so aware of the fact that, in May's coming election, your party is not set to do very well in this borough because you show no commitment, not just to the young people. You show no commitment when it comes to building houses for families. You show no commitment when it comes to improving, air quality within this borough. And for that reason, you're so desperate that the only thing that you can do is sling personal attacks at me. But it's just part of life.
Well said. I don't think one needs to add very much. Shafi, did you have your hand up? So, apologise.
Thank
Councillor
you,
Shafi,
Leader. I mean, it's really, Tim, you were at one stage responsible for running the education political side. So you are aware of some of the things we agreed in the council meeting that is some problems are historical and structural. We admitted, we agreed. But now you are trying to play dirty politics. It is not on. I think if we all know that population is increasing in Croydon, at the same time, the inquiries about protection of young children increasing, you know that, but central government bismally failed to address that issue and allocate proper funding. So what do you want? Do you want to have the cake and eat it?
Thank you. Hopefully more constructively, Councillor Maria Gatland.
Thank you, Leader. Could I go back to the first, to the Ofsted inspection? And while there clearly was progress was identified and indeed praised, particularly around the MASH and the front door, there was significant improvement. There were some areas of concern, particularly around quality assurance and auditing. So can I ask, is Camden working alongside you on that area at the moment? Is that one of the areas that Camden will give support? And if so, what support are they giving? And of course, your preparations for the second monitoring visit, how are they going? Thank you.
Camden's officers are working closely with some of our officers. I'm sure I can bring Barbara in. Yes, Barbara?
I'm happy to answer that question, Leader. Yes, so quality assurance is one of the key areas that Camden's working with us on. Camden's head of quality assurance has been spending some time here with us. You will know through our improvement board that we've used Achieving for Children to revise all our quality assurance frameworks and our approach to quality assurance, and the additional support that Camden are giving us is actually supporting our managers and our heads of service to make sure that they're applying the new framework well and supporting them in understanding what we call the thresholds. Are we getting it right in terms of determining the level of risk and the actions that should be taken? So they've undertaken a number of direct sessions with staff. They've also been actually doing some sampling of some of our audits and giving us some feedback on the quality of the work that we're doing as well.
Thank you, Barbara. Elisa, to conclude.
Just, very briefly, because I'd like to put this to bed once and for all, within the report that went to the Minister, page 14, it clearly says, and it speaks to 2012, when Councillor Pollard was the lead member responsible, and it says, while services were considered to be adequate, Ofsted did make a number of recommendations which were worth listing here, as many of those that relate to the quality of practice were similar issues found by both the JTI in 2016 and the single inspection in 2017. They were a number of the issues that unfortunately weren't resolved adequately. But the important thing in relation to that is that it said immediately in 2012, ensure effective management oversight of contacts to children's social care, and that within 3 months, analyse the content of contacts to ensure that thresholds are understood, a number of things, improve record keeping, ensure that social care assessments are completed in a timely way, speaks about supervision. That was in 2012, and the recommendations asked that they were completed both immediately and within 3 months. Now, on both sides of this chamber, unfortunately, the standard of provision for our young people in this borough, for children, our most vulnerable, hasn't been where we've wanted it to be. And the commitment that we have made on our side is that we are going to focus on ensuring that this improvement plan delivers the right level of service, the best level of service for our young people in this borough. Now, it clearly highlights that, you know, we can go back and forth and you can ask me why I didn't do something and I can ask you why you didn't do something within the timescale that they had recommended to you. But that doesn't help to move our children to the place that they need to be in to deliver the best service for them. So after today, I'm not going to rehearse the Ofsted inspection with you. I've clearly put on record, and it's out there, it clearly says, if anybody wants to check it out, page 14, section 6, which highlights Ofsted Safeguarding Inspection, May 2012. So it is written down, and it is clear that there have been failings right across this chamber on both sides in terms of delivery of the best provision for our young people in this borough. But moving forward, my commitment as the lead member is to ensure that I will oversee the improvement of this service so that our children, our real children, the ones that I speak about, that I see, the ones that I meet when I'm out on the Green Lane estate who are victims of this, you know, some of our young people who have high missing missing episodes within this borough and who need our support to ensure that they're able to turn their lives around. They're able to not worry when they go to sleep at night. That's going to be my focus moving forward. So it's up to you. You can either decide that you're going to join us on this side of the chamber and make these young people our focus, or you can continue to sit in the corner and sulk about what you think should and shouldn't have happened, because I know that you would have been happy to have seen, well, this is what I believe anyway, that you probably would have been happier to have seen a different outcome in terms of the Commissioner's report. I'm grateful that the Commissioner and the Minister have accepted that we as leadership are committed to improving the service, and I would ask that you would support us in that journey.
No, I'm not going to go around it again, Councillor Pollard. No, I think we've heard enough. I think on one side of this chamber, I think you've heard very clear political responsibility, both for improvement and responsibility for things not being, from our perspective, turned round anywhere near as quick as they should have been, was accepted. On the other side of the chamber, a service you ran for 6 years, we've heard no accepting of any responsibility for anything, including the grotesque cuts we've seen to services in this budget. Can we agree the recommendations of the report, Cabinet?
Agreed, Leader.
Thank you very much. And if we could now move on to another hugely important paper, and Councillor Butler, the implementation of the Homeless Reduction Act 2017.
Thank you, Leader. This council has always been supportive of the principles of the Homeless Reduction Act, but it's always been clear that it needs the resources, both financially and the staff, to ensure that it's implemented properly. The Act introduces preventing and relieving homelessness as a statutory duty for anyone who is homeless or threatened with homelessness. And we appreciate that these new duties will significantly increase demand on housing and support services within the Gateway and Welfare Directorate, parts of which will have to be redesigned in order to meet the new duties coming forward. Having assessed this, there's a potential increase of 1,400 applications. That means a 50% increase in customer demand, so it's quite significant. We estimated a cost of 2.2 million will be needed in order to carry out this service properly, and unfortunately we've only been allocated 1.2 million over 3 years. There's a new duty also on other public bodies to refer service users, and that's other public bodies such as the police, the NHS and GPs, and it's yet to be seen how that will actually play out and increase our workload. There'll also be an increased demand on floating support and supported housing, and we recognise already that we will have to increase the use of discretionary housing payments, which are already quite significant, in order to stop people becoming homeless in these boroughs. We're lucky to say that we are on the front foot in Croydon. We have got our Cape Gateway service, and we've always used prevention rather than waiting for people to become homeless. So we do hope that the service will lead to far better outcomes, in particular for single people that didn't come under the legislation before. And we also recognise that there will be more of a duty for people to engage with the council and look at those services like education and making sure you've got the right benefits, looking at your debts and so on, that will help prevent homelessness. While I'm speaking on this, Leader, I'd just like to thank, we've got Paul Aston and Julia Pitt with us this evening from Council Services, and I think everybody would recognise that there's a huge amount of work that's been done in this department to get ready for April. So I'd very much like to thank them for all the work they and their teams have done as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Councillor Louisa Woodley to add.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I thank Councillor Butler, and I'd just like to join in to thank the officers for the work that they've been doing. And just like to say that it's really disappointing to see that, as you said, Councillor Butler, that we've estimated it would cost us £2.2 million to implement this change, and yet the government's only given us £1.2 million, $1 million less than we need. And just to remind people, if we look in 3.17, that since 2015, the Gateway service has helped 1,300 families, prevented homelessness, and they've helped 500 people into jobs. And hopefully we'll be able to continue that standard, that level of work under the new Act. But it is, again, really disappointing that the government writes this Act and yet they fail to fund it. So thank you for the work that you've done so far, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain the high standard. Community Connect that we've had in New Addington Fieldway, over 30 families helped. Fantastic work. Hopefully we can keep it up.
Thank you very much, Louisa. Councillor Lynn Hale.
Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Butler has said, I do know that a huge amount of work has been going on by council officers to get everything in place for the implementation of this Act. And certainly I would pass on our thanks to council officers, including Julia and Paul, who are here tonight, and before them, of course, Mark Fowler did a lot of preparatory work on this. So many thanks to us for all the work that I know has been going on behind the scenes. Are you able to confirm that the new posts that have been created across the service will be filled and the staff trained by the 3rd of April? And that the new front door online assessment form will be ready and working along with the case management requirements? And finally, that the new Act encourages customers to work with the council on their housing needs. And I know there has been a lot of success using action plans, but there will, as I'm sure we'll all understand, be some people who won't or can't do this. I'm just wondering if you're expecting this to be a problem for the council and what would happen in those cases. Thank you.
Sorry? Paul? Yep, I'll answer that. The first question around the recruitment, nearly all the posts have been filled now, and we appreciate there'll be some last-minute training, but we've got enough fully trained officers now that by the 3rd of April that we're very confident that we'll be able to deliver the service. We're very, very confident. The developers of the new online tool, we should be trialling that at the beginning of March and testing it with the staff. And we're confident very confident that will be in place by the 3rd of April. And then the final thing around reviews, there is a bit in the legislation which says that you can penalise people if they don't work with you. But in reality, We're not looking to use that as a hammer to beat people. We've been very successful in getting people to work with us because it benefits them. So though it's there in the legislation, I don't think it's something that we'll be using very often.
Thank you for that. Is that okay, Lynn? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I can see nobody else. If we can move on and agree the recommendation, Cabinet. Thank you. And move on to Alison again with agenda item 9, the brick-by-brick business plan. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Leader. This is, as the title says, the brick-by-brick business plan, which we did say that we would bring regularly to Cabinet on a yearly basis. We've talked in the past about the aim of Brick by Brick, the company. It's a private independent development company, commercial in character, which focuses on providing a housing-led development for the benefit of the people of Croydon. Each year, Brick by Brick develops a business plan relating to its activities over the forthcoming year and presents it to the Cabinet for review. The report has already been to scrutiny, where there was ample opportunity for people to ask questions around it. In addition, ward and Cabinet members and local MPs are consulted by Brick as part of the development of any proposals in their local areas. We've spoke a lot about Brick by Brick in this chamber. It remains its purpose to deliver housing right across the borough, meeting the needs of local people, to ensure that development profit is returned to the council and therefore to the people of Croydon, to produce new homes in a variety of tenures with local lettings and sales policies, to have commercial efficiencies that can increase the amount of affordable housing. And we've seen the way that the planning applications have come forward, delivering far higher levels of affordable housing for people in this borough. It also looks at improving community facilities, having good quality design in their homes, and as we've talked in the past, the council is the sole shareholder. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that update. Councillor Pollard and then Councillor... Sorry?
Simon.
Councillor Hall. And then I'll bring colleagues in.
Thank you, Leader. Just in terms of the finances and financial implications, for those that remember the business plan presented last year, it predicted a higher level of overall borrowing than this plan predicts, and that is because the rephasing of the various different developments and the anticipation in terms of the order that will be done, which will be for sale, which will be for affordable rent, means that we can bring the maximum level of exposure from the council down, but well below what it was last year. But let's not forget the purpose of this. This wholly owned vehicle, which means all the benefits come to the council, right, as well provides the housing, as Councillor Butler so eloquently has just presented, but also provides both in terms of realising the value of some of the council's assets, income stream in terms of the loans that we make, and ultimate return in terms of the profits made and the savings on EA and TA, huge benefits for the council financially, and as part of our asset strategy to make sure that we make the most of assets whilst delivering for the people of Croydon. This guarantees that this contributes to that in a massive way, and in a way by being wholly owned that will only be for the benefit of Croydon and Croydon residents and nobody else.
Thank you. Perhaps I should come to Lynn Hale first as the spokesperson, then, I don't know. Well, let's do Lynn first.
Thank you, Leader. Just two questions, please, on the report. It states in para 5.17 that brick by brick revenues start to generate from early 2018. Given that we're now in early 2018, could we have a more specific date? And the second question is referencing para 4.9 around staffing, and that this includes services purchased directly from the council. Can you tell me how this is worked out? Is it on an hourly rate that's charged or some sort of different arrangement? And can you put a figure on the sum charged to Brick by Brick for 2017? And finally, will this all show up in Brick by Bricks and the council's accounts? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Shall I take a couple more, Alison? Or Simon, and then come back? So Councillor Pollard, then Councillor Cummins, then if there's nobody else, we'll take the questions together between Councillor Hall and Councillor Butler. Councillor Pollard.
Councillor Butler, I was interested in your comment during your introductory remarks about how you've consulted with MPs, local councillors and residents as part of the brick by brick process. Can you tell me how many times when people have said that they didn't want the development to go ahead, that we have actually not gone ahead with the development? How many times have we actually changed what we were going to do as a result of the consultation?
I think you might be straying into the planning territory there as well, but I'm not an expert in these things. Councillor Cummins.
Thank you, Leader. Section 5.3 talks about land purchases from the private sector, which are both strategic and speculative. What visibility would there be of land purchases from the private sector to the council and to the general public, given that the money that they would be using to do the purchases would be borrowed from the council?
Councillor Butler.
Yeah. I'll answer on Councillor Pollard's question directly to me about how many times when people didn't want developments to go ahead. We've talked many times, and I think we've touched on it tonight, around austerity, the housing need in this borough. We've just touched on a paper about the Homeless Reduction Act, about homeless reduction. And so, you know, the truth of the matter is that we do need to provide homes for homeless people in this borough. We do need to provide homes for sons and daughters in this borough that are currently living at home and they can't afford to move on. We need to provide homes for tonight, those children who are living in bed and breakfast accommodation, our children that Elise has talked about earlier, that are living in circumstances that are simply not acceptable. And sadly, nobody ever asks them whether development should go ahead. They never get the opportunity to speak. So we have a responsibility to speak out for them. Having said that, apart from Conservative councillors who seem to object to any housing, any homes, anywhere, any day, anyhow, the majority of the schemes that Brick by Brick went out to consultation on have changed, and quite dramatically, by the time they got to planning. So yes, we are going to build homes. We recognise the need for homes, but they're going to be decent, good homes, and they're not going to be on sites that are overdeveloped. So where local residents have raised concerns, and there have been all sorts of concerns, they have been listened to, and it's very easy to see that on initial consultation, some schemes have changed quite dramatically, some schemes have changed in small ways, but the majority of them, between consultation and going to planning, have changed because of the views that were raised at the time.
I think, you know, if we reflect, he's gone now actually, I think Councillor Vinnie Mohan, as Councillor Stuart King pointed out earlier, seemed to be more concerned about making sure there was a parking space for Councillor Thomas's third car than a home and a roof over the head of somebody in need of a house. And I think politics, as ever, is about the language of priorities. And I think we once again seen the Conservative priorities this evening. Councillor Collins.
I can't believe your comments, because I've been on the council for a long time and obviously had to spend 8 years with you guys in charge of the planning applications, and I'll probably count on one hand the number of times when there were developments in the north of the borough which were nowhere near of the same quality of this, where you packed people in like sardines and you didn't do proper refuse plans on properties because you packed people in there so much, and which is one of the reasons some of the fly tipping we have is because there's not sufficient. You didn't turn down any of those, but what irritates me is that the planning committee didn't under your. If we go back and check just how many developments you turned down, you'll find your only interest in this is purely political, because you only are interested in refusing applications and standing up against them when it means you could cause a fuss in an area where you think you're going to get some votes, and that's as simple as that. So you really are a hypocrite.
I would have to say on the experience that a number have had on the doorsteps of Shirley North recently, it's a tactic that hasn't worked. Councillor Hall, have you anything to add to the? There were some questions earlier, was there?
Just quickly on those questions. On page 213 of the Cabinet Papers, there's details of the amounts charged each year to Brick by Brick by the Council, which represents full cost recovery of the services provided, approximately 1.3 million. And of course, those will be shown in the accounts of Brick by Brick. And indeed, any other initiatives such as acquisitions of land and expenditure will all be shown in those, and clearly as part of the business case presented to the Brick by Brick directors, there would be assessments of the financial return from acquiring any non-council land, if that was appropriate. For example, typically, as I understand it, to assemble some land to deliver improved schemes from that which could be done just on council land.
Thank you, Simon. Can we agree the recommendation, Cabinet? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 10, the Housing Commission on Community-Led Housing. Sorry, Jason, did you...
My question wasn't particularly contentious, I don't think, about visibility of private land purchases. Well, we can answer that in the spirit of... Well, I did ask it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Apologies, Lee. I thought when I referenced the business plan and how that would be approved and then presented as part of Brick by Brick's plans that come regularly to this Cabinet, including the justification for that, which, as I understand it, would typically be for assembling a parcel of land, some plots to deliver a more holistic scheme than could be done just on the part of a site that is council owned. So that would come on a regular basis to this Cabinet.
I think it was crystal clear. Okay, if we can now move on to agenda item 10. The Housing Commission on Community-Led Housing. I'll just say a few words on this. One of our manifesto commitments was to join the Co-op Innovation Network of councils, and that we duly did, sharing best practice and work across the country. And I'm glad that, as the council leader, we've made our contribution to that network with a strong piece of work here that seems to have been well received nationally. We had a very powerful launch of this in Parliament, but a few weeks ago. I can see John Montez over there. Thank you, John, again for the phenomenal amount of work you and your team did on the Community-Led Housing Commission for us, and it's Croydon's contribution to a national response to housing, whether that's in areas of high demand or low demand. But happy to direct any questions, probably to John or Alison, if there are any. No, thank you very much indeed. Can we agree the recommendation, Cabinet? And move on to the scrutiny. Sean, have we got anything to add on scrutiny?
Nothing to add.
So we've got the stage 1 recommendations, which is 11, agenda item 11. Can we agree that, Cabinet? Thank you. And then the stage 2, Sean, anything to add on that?
Nothing to add.
So can we agree that, Cabinet? Thank you. And that moves us on to agenda item 13. Councillor Hall, anything to add on agenda item 13?
Nothing to add.
Can we agree agenda item 13? There are no yellow pages, so can we conclude the Cabinet meeting? Can I thank anybody still watching it at home and thank everybody for their contributions tonight. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues.